Good afternoon. Welcome to Cohn and Krueger. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. A lot of news dropping today with the 49ers. But before we get into it, I just want to acknowledge real quick that Larry and I went head-to-head this week in the March Madness bracket, and I won by like 40 votes. It was the closest runoff in the whole thing, and it just shows how popular we both are. So I just want to shout out Larry. That was a lot of fun.
I know you probably won then by 58 votes because I voted 18 times in the last 5 minutes, and I started getting carpal tunnel, and I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm like 18's enough. If I can't boost myself by 18 votes, so there you go. It's probably more like 58.
It was close. Anyway. That's enough patting ourselves in the back. I think today we're still trying to digest what John Lynch said, because Kyle Shanahan in particular has been dancing around naming a quarterback. He said I had 2 starters. Lynch came out today and said essentially when Brock Purdy's healthy, he's the guy. So I asked for you. You weren't there. I asked for you. I said, okay, John, well, if Purdy's the guy and Lance needs to play, but he doesn't get that opportunity, are you going to trade him? And he goes, we like Lance on the team for now, which was such a weird thing to say. He said it like, no, we're not going to trade him. But when you look at the transcript, he said we like Lance on the team for now. How do you interpret that?
Well, let's say you did a live stream later today with Jesse, and Jesse's like, hey, I see that you have Larry on your channel. And you said, I have Larry on my channel for now.
Ooh, that wouldn't sound good.
I'd be like, maybe I'm going to have Monday afternoons free.
I like Larry on my channel for now. Yeah, he's good until I replace him.
I like Larry on my channel for now. If you had said, I like Larry, then it's like, hey, you know what? Then it sounds like we're,
good point.
So it's a totally different deal. I just don't think, I think John Lynch is a smart guy who doesn't say any words by accident. And we like Trey on our team right now. Sounds like they're getting. I'll stand by what I said at the end of the season. I think at the end of the year, it sounded very much like they were going to trade Trey Lance on draft day, and I have seen nothing from their behavior or their statements that says otherwise. And I'm looking for things.
I have an alternate interpretation.
Okay,
it's possible that the reason he said right now is that he doesn't have much trade value, Trey Lance. And trading him would be for maybe a 3rd-round pick. I have no idea. Because he hasn't played in 3 years. And if that's the case, then is it worth it? You already have 3 third-round picks. Maybe the idea is keep him 1 more year just in case, because Brock's coming off a serious injury. And if Brock is everything the Niners think he is, then trade next year.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes the most cap sense, right? I mean, if you look at the cap, that makes the most sense. But
they have to create a little cap space to trade him now. Is that correct?
Well, I think isn't there a cap hit of some kind of significance if they can
because of the signing bonus would accelerate. That's the term. Yes.
Right. So I think it would be more advantageous not to trade Trey, but I just think that then he went on to say, hey, Kyle and I always joke that we'd trade each other if we got a good deal. So I think what they're just going to do is they know, at least in my belief, I believe Trey Lance is probably as good as most of the quarterbacks in this draft. And I think there's probably other NFL people that probably feel the same way. And so those quarterbacks, I think, are going to get off the board in the top 10. And then I think the 49ers are going to open up, the phone lines will be there if anybody wants to trade for Trey Lance. And I think they are willing to trade him between, let's say, the 10th pick and the 30th pick, or 10th pick and the 40th pick, and maybe a player.
Yeah, they won't say no to that.
And then
they would not say no.
Once they get to 40 or so, maybe they'll say, you know what, or once a certain guy's off the board that they would like. But, the thing about it, Grant, they're going and looking at NFL quarterbacks, guys like Tanner McKee and Clayton Tune and the kid from Utah State. They're looking at quarterbacks. Is that to be a 4th quarterback, or is Darnold going to be the 2? And this is to be the 3rd quarterback.
I mean, they talked about Darnold today like he's a 2, right? They talked to John was just so effusive in his love for Sam Darnold. He had a breakthrough performance last year. It was like, wow.
Right. They made maybe they feel like he's a future starter. They've caught lightning in a bottle. They've got him at a great deal. I mean, you got to remember this too. You got to do something outside of money to attract Sam Darnold. He's been in some bad situations, but he could have gone somewhere else for a better deal if his deal here is to be the third quarterback.
Right.
So maybe he's not the third quarterback. Maybe he's more like the second quarterback, and they're going to trade Trey on draft day for picks. Who knows? Or
I just want to say I'm skeptical that a team would offer the 49ers a first-round pick this year for Lance. I'm with you that if they get that offer, from how John Lynch was talking today, I think they'd accept it. I just don't think they'll get it. So that's why if I had to bet, I think they're going to hold him one more year, essentially waste another year of his youth. And then, if they need him, play him. They might need him. But otherwise, if Brock bounces back, plays well, keeps the job, I think they'll trade him next year. But it does seem like this might be his last year if he's even on the team. With the team.
Here's the one thing that we don't know. How wed are they to Brock Purdy? And if let's just say Kyle Shanahan thinks, privately, man, Brock Purdy's the absolute perfect quarterback for my offense. Then it's just a matter of how does he come out of this surgery and what are you going to do with Trey?
Well, what did Lynch say at the end? I mean, we said, we really think this is a guy. Like, how do you interpret a guy? Like, not just, to me, I look at that as like a franchise guy. We think he's a guy, like a special guy.
He said that about
Purdy.
Trey.
About Purdy at the end. Because the last question was from Matt Mayoko, and he said, please, if you don't mind, like, it's only been 8 games. Like, why do you, we've seen a lot of young quarterbacks sort of get figured out by the league and come back down to earth. Why are you so sure with Brock? And like Lynch didn't flinch. He was like, oh, it's just the way he played. I mean, it's not just that he can run the system, but he can do so much outside of structure. He's so much a better athlete than we thought. And we really think he's a guy, like meaning like someone worth investing time and money into. I'm thinking. So that's what they think of Brock. They could be wrong. I think they thought this about Jimmy Garoppolo at one point, but that's what they think of Brock right now, which means if he's the guy and Darnold's a high level 2, then yeah, Lance is the odd man out. And now it's in like Operation rehabilitate his trade value if possible. And I couldn't imagine it could get any lower than it is now. All they have to do is give him some good practice reports, have me and you talk him up, and have a good preseason, and all of a sudden his value goes up.
Well, I mean, where would you put Trey Lance in this draft as far as quarterbacks?
Yeah. Well, let's be brutally honest here. I mean, he hasn't played in 3 years. Personally, you couldn't put him in the top 4. To me,
I'm not convinced on any of these guys.
He'd be 5. He'd be 5. You'd put him right ahead of Hendon Hooker, who's 25 years old. But you couldn't put him ahead of any of these young top 4 quarterbacks, even Will Levis, because they played football last year and the year before that, and they didn't break their ankle.
That's true, but also they all have their weaknesses. They all have their downsides. I mean, Stroud.
So does Trey.
Great. Yeah, Trey has his weaknesses. I like Trey better as a prospect than all of these guys, except for Richardson and maybe Stroud. Bryce Young's tiny. Will Levis, I watched Kentucky. He was not good. Hendon Hooker had phenomenal receivers, and he's older, and he's now coming off a major injury. And then the other thing is,
I just feel like real quick, if you plop Trey Lance somehow, if he got to be in this draft, I don't think he's getting picked ahead of those 4.
No, I don't. I think for sure he's going in the 20s. I think if you're a team, like if I'm Tennessee,
tough one. I don't know.
Tennessee and I'm Rand Carthon, I think what I'm doing is I'm trading back, getting more draft capital into the teens, and then trading that pick for Trey.
It could happen. He's such an enigma because he really has 1 year of playing experience at North Dakota State, and it was 2019. I mean, how do you evaluate him in 2023? And I think where the Niners are coming from is like, I don't even want to try anymore. It's like, look, Brock Purdy's given them most of what they hoped Trey Lance would give them. So why even bother with the Trey Lance project? Yeah, Trey Lance could end up being better than Brock, but Brock's given them like 85% of what they were hoping to get with Trey. So why don't they just count their blessings and move on? I think that's what they're thinking.
I think you're right. And then don't forget what John's last comments were at the combine. Trey's just got to play, and that's the challenge because we got a team that's ready to win right now. And the implication was obvious. The implication was Trey's not ready to play right now. We're ready to win right now. Our timeline doesn't mesh with his. We're trading Trey. But everybody denied that at the time. Then now follow that up with what he said today in Arizona. You're there. You saw the look on his face, so you could probably speak to it better than I could. But to me, it sounds very much like we're trading Trey. We don't want to get ripped off. We're not going to take anything in a trade. But absolutely, after the 10th pick and before the 40th pick, if you come and call us.
For sure. He's open for business.
And
if we don't get that, we could do this one more year and maybe trade him next year. Because maybe next year's draft is stronger. Who knows? So, yeah, I'm with you on that. This was not an encouraging day. If you were a Trey Lance fan and you were hoping that the Niners secretly believed in him and are going to put him right back in the starting spot, didn't sound that way today. Now, John isn't necessarily the final word in this organization. Kyle is. So we'll see what he says tomorrow. We'll see if he strikes a different tone or has a totally different message. I'm guessing he won't, but we'll see. He sometimes likes to surprise people. Sourdough Sam says, if I was Trey, I'd want a trade, but he has no leverage. I'm sure he'd love one. But, what are you going to do? Yo, Adrian, says G. Martinez. Why? That's Philly. I'm in Arizona. Shreddy Murphy says, it's all good until Brock and Darnold get hurt. Yeah.
And we don't know. I mean, John Lynch was standing right there 5 feet away from Tanner McKee. For all we know, he loves Tanner McKee, and he wants McKee to be. I'll say this. I mean, let's lay this out there for what it is. If you trade Trey Lance and draft a Tanner McKee, let's just say, Jake Haener, fill in the blank, third quarterback, you have a much cleaner quarterback room in that you have a clear number 1, a clear number 2, and a clear number 3. In no controversy, no division, no media circus, no 49er content creator circus, no debate, no back and forth, no distractions. That's it.
But you did get worse. I mean, you just said that Trey Lance would be maybe 3rd in this draft class. So, I mean, you're going to get worse if you do that.
Right, at quarterback.
But
trading Trey, you're getting better somewhere else by whatever you get in return. I wouldn't do it. Grant, there's no way I would do it for like a 3rd and a 5th round pick.
I wouldn't either.
If you really believe that's his value, then he's going nowhere. But if you believe his value is higher, and I believe his value is higher, I think there's many palatable deals that could make them better and would give them a far less distraction quarterback room. And maybe if Brock's going to be the guy anyway, and they're all in on that, then why would you want Trey there and all this distraction and all this debate when you could improve your football team at 2 spots maybe and bring in somebody else you like? I'm just saying.
I feel like Lance is like an NFT. People are saying, man, this guy's worth so much. And it's like, are you sure? Are you sure it's not worth nothing? Right. Because, again, with Lance, it was always a projection. It was very little evidence. He didn't do much to become the 3rd pick in the draft. No offense. But he probably did the least of any quarterback ever to become the 3rd pick in the draft. And now he still has done nothing. So I'm saying he's the NFT. I like Trey Lance, but still, like, what is his value? It depends on the eye of the beholder. I guess it just takes one team to think that he's still worth primo.
Here's the rub, Grant, and to me, this is where the rubber meets the road. They've seen him more than we have in practice. They know that if he plays, his value either goes up or it goes down. If they believe that he's going to be great, they'll hold him and let his value go up. But if they feel that he's not ready to play and that if he played this year, his value's going down, then they probably do trade him this year on draft day. Makes sense.
They're also not – I'm with you. But they're also not so good at evaluating quarterbacks in practice. Otherwise, Brock Purdy would have started week 1 or week 3. But I'm just saying they should be careful on evaluating Trey Lance in practice. One thing, again, they might be careful of jettisoning him from the organization before seeing what he looks like with Christian McCaffrey. Because once Christian McCaffrey came on this team, all of a sudden Jimmy Garoppolo looked like a Pro Bowl quarterback. Brock Purdy looked like a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't know. Maybe he'll make Trey Lance look functional. And maybe then his trade value goes up. Because I argue that his trade value couldn't be lower. And I don't know what it is, but it's at an all-time low right now, whatever it is. Gregory Young says, Kyle strikes again. Feel bad for Trey. Should trade him and stop the dilemma if they are really sold on Brock. Let him have a chance elsewhere. Yeah, I mean, you want to do what's right for him, but you got to do what's right for the organization. And selling low, It may not be it. I got a question for you. One more with Trey. If Brock Purdy turns out to be what they think he is, and the Niners just give up on Trey after 3 starts in 2 seasons, does the success of Brock Purdy cancel out the utter failure of Trey Lance?
Wow. Yeah, I guess. And also it also matters what you get for Trey Lance. Like the Warriors got rid of James Wiseman and they turned him into a 30-year-old injury-prone 2-guard.
Yeah.
Who doesn't start and comes off the bench and plays half the floor. So that's going to look really bad. If the Niners trade Trey Lance for the GP2 equivalent, like a 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick, or a 5th-round pick and a conditional 3rd, and Trey goes and becomes the next Mahomes or whatever, yeah, they're going to look really, really bad on that right there. So I would suggest that if they do move him, since he does have high-end skills, at least potential, and now that he's got to play to realize that potential, but they got to get at least a pick before 40. They either got to get a late 1st or a high 2, and preferably another asset as well. Otherwise, they potentially could look really, really bad on the back end.
Yeah, but if Purdy ends up being like Kurt Warner or Fran Tarkenton or some really special quarterback who goes to Pro Bowls, like I guess it doesn't matter that the Niners just totally wasted 3 first-round picks on a project that they never even really started. I mean, I guess you could look at it that way.
It's amazing. I'm not going to interrupt you, Grant, but it's amazing that Shanahan and his father literally have the exact same situation. His father traded up for RG3, paid a king's ransom to trade up, then drafted Kirk Cousins, watched Cousins become a significant player, and RG3's out of the league. So in a lot of ways, it reminds me exactly of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I mean, it's terrible what happened to RG3, but at the same time, you just need one franchise quarterback, and it doesn't matter who it is. So if they're both franchise quarterbacks, but Brock ends up flourishing here and Trey ends up flourishing somewhere else, you still can't really knock the Niners because they got a guy who works for them, and they presumably end up getting something for Trey at the end of this, as opposed to Jimmy.
As long as Trey's not Mahomes. If Trey is Mahomes,
yeah.
Even if because it's also not going to be about just Brock. So let's say Brock wins a Super Bowl with the Niners and is really good and a 10-year starter. That's awesome. But if Trey becomes Mahomes and you got a 5th-round pick, you're going to have to answer for that trade. So I think it's tied to 2 things: Brock's success and whatever they get in return for Trey.
Well, what's interesting is the longer the Niners hold on to Trey, like imagine if they had him on the bench for 3 years, they trade him, he ends up being good. It's like, what were you looking at? For 3 years on the bench in practice, you developed this strong opinion. You moved on without really seeing him in a game, which, Larry, I mean, you're in practice. You see these games. They're like different sports. How do you judge a quarterback in a practice where he's wearing a different colored jersey and you can't touch him? It's like, you can't even call that football. It's basketball on grass. So it'd be interesting if he goes somewhere else and then I'm just like, oh, damn. Turns out he probably should have given him a chance. That's why I feel like it gets complicated with this trade. Is I think deep down they're scared that they're wrong.
Oh, I know. Oh, the potential is off the charts,
right?
For Trey, because he's big, he's strong, he's got a strong arm. But there's a couple things, Grant. Really, 3 things that stand out to me. He airmailed a lot of layup throws in practice this summer. There was a lot of plays where he went through progressions and held the ball in drills where you're supposed to get that ball out. And
in practice, he would fire the check down high and late. It's like
high and late, and then
high and late, yeah.
And then also there was a number of plays where we're watching, and he's looking around, and he just tucks it and runs. Well, he's not supposed to tuck it and run. All right, so that right there is like not good. But then also,
I mean, he can do it in a game, but in practice, there's no pass rush. You're supposed to like find someone to throw to.
Get rid of the ball. But, I mean, the other thing is that he makes one throw over and over and over again. He throws a very hard ball all the time. So there's not a lot of nuance to his throwing right now. Everything's coming out full bore, full bore, full bore. I don't see a lot of touch and timing. And I see a very raw, crude all arm kind of a thrower who has a little bit of a hitch. He doesn't just bring it back and then throw it. He brings it from here to here to here. You know what I mean? So there's a hitch. So if they see a hitch and they say, you know what, veteran defensive backfield coaches are all going to see this hitch, and everybody's going to coach everybody up on this. And 3 weeks after this guy becomes a starter, he's going to be throwing picks left and right because people are going to jump on his hitch. If they see that mechanical flaw that we don't necessarily see, then they may feel like bad football's coming and that this is the good time to trade him before he plays that bad football. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of factors here, but I think that there's more here than meets the eye.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. If the Niners do ever move him, I'd like to see who takes on this project and how do they approach him. Like Kyle, when they drafted him, they made it seem like we're going to use him as a quarterback, put him under center, and let him do play action and sort of get him throwing on the run. But that's not really how they used him. They used him as an athlete in the shotgun, running the zone read, and it didn't work, and he got injured. I wonder if he goes somewhere else, is he going to be playing like Jalen Hurts, or is he going to actually be under center playing like a traditional quarterback? Maybe that's the key to unlocking his potential, letting him play quarterback.
And why didn't they let him play quarterback? Did they feel he wasn't going to be able to be accurate in those windows? Did they feel like he wasn't seeing it pre-snap? Was he, is that he can't throw certain patterns? I mean, I'd love
I thought they let him do it against Houston at the end of 2021, and I thought
agree.
It looked good in the second half. He's a rookie. He really tore him up in the second half. He never went back to it. I'll never understand it, Larry.
And he gives you a lot of what Brock gives you in the off-schedule stuff because he's got explosive pocket movement and he's got a big arm. But it might just be something as simple, Grant, as they see the two sides and the debate coming and they want no part of it. Does Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch seem like they want to be? They don't ever say, we love to be on Hard Knocks. No, they want to keep their stuff private. If they see a gigantic divisive quarterback battle coming between two quarterbacks that they may like both, that right there could be incentive to make a trade.
Sure. I just think but it's that gets pushed, a circus gets pushed off until Brock comes back. And I think it's probably tough to trade Trey Lance until Brock comes back because John can say whatever he wants and the organization can sound as confident as they want about his recovery. They don't know until it's happened. So maybe you hold on to Trey, especially if you don't get a first-round pick offer. Maybe you'll hold on to Trey until you see that Brock is absolutely recovered. Might be the prudent thing to do, unless someone's offering you the 8th pick in the draft for Trey Lance. In which case, by all means, I don't see it happening.
Or if you feel like there's some quarterback in this draft, the Niners may be somewhat cocky based on the fact that they took Purdy with Mr. Irrelevant pick last year. Maybe they see there's a quarterback that's going to be there clearly at the end of the 3rd round that's projected to go in the 4th or 5th round that they think upside potential is better than Trey, and they like him more than Trey, and they just want to draft that player and move Trey somewhere else. I mean, it's possible. That's all I'm saying.
Could be. Corey Soto says fans can tell themselves whatever they want, but if Purdy is your future, enjoy another 5 years of mid-level play while trophies go to the top quarterbacks. Yeah, Purdy's a great story. He was a Kurt Warner story. Is he a Hall of Fame level quarterback? Is he an all-pro level quarterback? Because it seems like you need it. You need that kind of talent. And I don't know. I don't know. He didn't struggle against the Cowboys, but the offense struggled against the Cowboys. 19 points. It's going to be interesting to see Brock Purdy over an entire season against a more difficult schedule because the Niners did have an easy schedule last year.
Yeah, and I expect once the elbow thing's behind him, you're going to see him progress, get bigger, stronger, more sudden, more, better knowledge of this system. He should get better in several phases in year 2. But obviously the elbow thing could take him back and there could be regression. As long as there's not regression based on the injury, there should be progression based on the experience.
I'd also like to see what would happen to Brock Purdy if Christian McCaffrey weren't on the field. Like, McCaffrey's a huge part of their offense. He uses them a lot. He throws a lot of short passes, and McCaffrey catches those. Gets a lot of touches. Shanahan has a tough time keeping his running backs healthy. If McCaffrey misses an extended period of time, what happens to Brock and the whole offense? But again, they can find this out before they trade Trey Lance and before they extend Brock Purdy. Like, these are things they'll learn. Thank goodness. They're not like in the situation they were in with Jimmy 5 years ago where they extended him after 5 starts.
I'll say this. If I'm George Kittle and I have any say on it, hell yes, I want Brock Purdy. George Kittle.
He's expressed that.
He was a noticeably better player with Brock Purdy than he was with Jimmy Garoppolo. And so what does that tell you? It tells me that, the quarterback matters, and that if I'm Kittle, I'm doing what I can to make sure that Purdy's the guy.
Yeah, I think he's been doing that. Mark Hope says, love the show. Hey, Grant, can you ask Larry to unblock me? Please, I'm a nice guy. Mark Hope is a nice guy.
All right. I'll unblock you. How do I unblock?
I don't know.
On Twitter?
On Twitter or YouTube?
How to be on YouTube?
I told him I did my end of the bargain. The Chef 93 says Purdy's poor arm strength won't benefit from the injury.
Well, there's no. Well, you know what? I would say yes, but I just got back from spring training and I interviewed a guy named Keaton Wynn. Grant, this guy threw 92 miles an hour. He tears up his elbow. He has elbow reconstruction surgery. He's throwing 100 miles an hour. He picked up 8 miles an hour as a baseball pitcher on his fastball with the reconstructed elbow.
But Purdy didn't have the reconstruction. He had the repair.
Right.
Should have had that reconstruction.
Yes.
That's what I heard. You come back stronger. Sirs 11.
He's Brett Favre. He's suddenly Brett Favre.
Yeah. Sirs 11 says Brock is just a mobile Jimmy G and now a weaker arm. So what was the point of drafting Trey? If I was Trey, I would tell them to trade me ASAP. He's better than Jimmy G, I think. I don't think they really have that much in common. I mean, they can operate the offense.
Yeah. Why? Because one guy's 6 feet and change and the other guy's 6'1" and change, or 6'1" and change versus 6'2" and change. They're basically totally different quarterbacks.
They're way different.
Jimmy has a much better arm as far as just flick it. He could flick it and release it really quick.
He doesn't move
step into it, but Brock's got ability to. Brock, to me, Grant, looked like a poor man's Russell Wilson. Early young Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Where he's got, especially when he did the little bootleg game and he got the first down, he slid and he put the ball forward. That to finish a game, that was so Russell.
Russell to me though was thicker. I know they list Brock Purdy at 220. I call BS on that. 209er says forever lost some respect the way they wasted Trey. Hey, well, the story isn't over yet. Let's hear what Kyle has to say tomorrow. Seriously, fire Kyle, says Midi Zone. Doesn't want to hear what Kyle has to say tomorrow. Glass half full guy says, saw today Ryan Hensley said on Twitter Mac Jones was Lynch's guy and Trey was Shanahan's guy. Do you guys buy this after John Lynch's comments today? I mean, I don't have those sources. I believe Ryan, but Lynch has never really talked about Trey like he was the spark plug behind that move. Never really has, in my opinion. But I don't know.
I think I think Kyle's guy was Zach Wilson. I do.
I actually agree with that, but yeah,
Kyle's
I agree.
Guy was Zach Wilson. I think Lynch's guy was Lance. I think Lynch convinced Kyle and the other scouts to go with Lance over Mac Jones. That's what I think.
Nathan Wardell, thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. Fish and chips. None of these quarterbacks might be good enough, right? It's possible, absolutely. I mean, the Niners know next to nothing about two of them. Kyle Shanahan's cat says Lynch, Purdy, dad had exact Lynch.
Just quote from Lynch.
Purdy dad had the exact same injury genetics. Did he? Purdy's dad?
Purdy's dad was a minor league player for the Giant organization, and he may have had elbow reconstruction. But I don't
Sourdough Sam says, can we trade all 3 quarterbacks for one elite one and a right tackle? We're going to talk about that next. Michael Hamilton says, Kyle's doing Shanna type things. Brock and Trey are both good. Whomever can deliver my Super Bowl trophy has my vote. Shouldn't have drafted Trey if they didn't believe. It's one of the strangest stories of all time. And maybe if they would just improve their offensive line, both of them would succeed. On YouTube, I can't send super stickers to you. He's trying to give you money.
Oh, I got you. I'll unblock you after the show. I'll go in there and I'll find Mark Hope and I'll say, you know what, Mark? Come on back.
Second chance.
Come on.
All right, so John Lynch was asked about Lamar Jackson in kind of a jokey way. Like, hey, Have you ever just considered saying screw it and going after someone like Lamar? And I don't know if you saw the answer, but John was basically saying, like, one, they really like the quarterback room they have, and two, it seems like they're kind of locked into this salary structure of not spending a lot of money on a quarterback because they have so many high-priced players on second and third contracts on their team. They really can't afford to spend big on a quarterback for a few years. So I think the whole Lamar Jackson thing, like, if anyone thought the Niners had that up their sleeve, I think it's time to forget about it.
I don't think it made sense, because you know what isn't spoken there. It's, do you want Lamar or would you rather have Bosa and Ayuk and those? Because significant players will be leaving if you add $30 million.
You can't have McCaffrey. You can't have McCaffrey.
Right.
Kittle. Yeah.
Yeah. Several.
Okay, real quick. They have the highest. They have the highest paid tight end, the highest paid running back, or up like among the highest paid among the highest paid wide receivers, middle linebacker, edge rusher. Pretty soon. I mean, it's a very expensive team.
Not to mention, let's look at what Lamar has done: 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. Oh well, maybe it was a bad year. Okay, but he was injured, didn't finish the year, played 12 games. The year before, 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Lamar played 12 games this year. I think he had 13 turnovers in 12 games.
Yeah.
So
and how many games did he? How many games did he miss the last 2 years?
He's never done it in the playoffs. Who's got more playoff wins, Brock Purdy or Lamar Jackson? It's Brock Purdy.
And how many games has Lamar missed the last 2 years? He's an injury-prone player coming to a team that can't handle that kind of issue. Doesn't get better here. So yeah.
And he's a running quarterback. You now want him in his 30s at big money, 100% guaranteed. It's not a fit for like 19 different reasons.
Didn't we learn this with Debo? Like if a large part of a player's value is running the ball, are you really going to pay for that? It's important, but it's volatile too. They get injured. Look at Debo. You don't pay for running backs.
Right.
And he's half running back. That's what makes him special.
Guys get hurt running the ball. That's why almost nobody who runs the ball gets a second contract.
Yeah. It's true.
And that's why you got to keep going into the draft for more backs, because these guys get hurt. Yeah.
So I think it's time to forget about it.
Yeah.
Adam says, here's almost $2. Thank you very much. J.R. Pena says, Purdy was a one-hit wonder. Lance reminds me of a cheap Kaepernick. Everything a fastball. Neither one is the quarterback for this team. Bring in Kirk Cousins. Do you miss Jimmy? He misses Jimmy. I think J.R. Pena misses Jimmy.
One-hit wonder. He went 8-0.
Here's what I thought was weird.
2 playoff games.
Lynch was like, I really think Jimmy's going to have great success with the Raiders. It's like, dude, he's not on your team anymore. You don't have to keep saying that. If you really think he's going to be great on the Raiders, then why'd you let him go? It's a weird thing to say.
You know what the weirdest part of I don't know if you want to hit this later, but the weirdest part of that whole Lynch thing today, and you were right there, he took a lot of time to go through all of the departures and then skipped Robbie Gould.
That's true. I cut that part out because I was bored. I was like, all right, come on, you're filibustering. But you're right. He didn't mention Robbie Gould. What's that about?
What is that about? And is Robbie Gould, is this Zane Gonzalez thing mean Robbie Gould's actually gone?
Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe yeah. Because someone asked him about Zane Gonzalez, and he's like, is that the move at kicker? And he was like, it's a move. It's basically, that was his answer. It's a move.
Wait, think about it. Actually, I've heard people suggest that not mentioning Robbie Gould was kind of a slam at Robbie, but actually, maybe he didn't say goodbye to Robbie because he's not going to say goodbye to Robbie.
Because it doesn't seem like Lynch's personality to be petty like that. Lynch is the diplomat. Even if he didn't like you, he wouldn't do that.
Right. So he's going to say, you know what?
Love Robbie.
I'm a big Larry Krueger fan. I like Grant.
Exactly.
I had a great sit down with Grant. He's a terrific guy. Larry, I just saw Larry. He's doing well.
Even if he didn't feel that way, he would never let you know that he didn't feel that way. And from every interaction I've ever had with John Lynch is, hey, Grant, uses my name, eye contact, handshake. Gentlemen, Captain America here. Like, he's not messing. Yeah, this is who he is.
He's not petty. He's not.
So That's Kyle. Kyle's petty. Sorry. Sorry. So, yeah, I'm with you. Corey Soto says, where's Trey's representation? Too passive for my taste. I'd be posting videos of myself throwing a Nerf ball, whatever. Make yourself visible. Maybe the Niners don't like that. Maybe they're like, they want their quarterbacks off social media. Have you thought about that?
I mean, what's to be gained by that?
It's a lot of look at me stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're selling yourself as what you are, which is you're a humble, good kid who works hard and wants to get nothing but better. And that's not like your move. That's who you are. So why suddenly go with this? Look at me over here. I'm working hard. I'm Johnny Hustle. I think Trey understands whether he's going to be here or elsewhere. He's going to get an opportunity, and it's just about preparing himself for that opportunity.
NG49 says, start Brock, second-year quarterback, right off recovery of a major injury, expected to win a Super Bowl, no or limited OTA trading camp, trade high upside Trey, showing faith in Darnold. Sounds like a ticking time bomb. I do think, I mean, look, if Trey Lance were 33 and he were Drew Brees and they're like, look, he's going to miss the whole offseason, but he'll be there week one, I'd be like, I don't care. Cool. But he's not. He's 23. He's Brock Purdy. And I wonder if just throwing him in there as soon as he's ready is the right thing for him and the team. I mean, he might need a little prep. I don't know. He had it last year.
I mean, the injury from my perspective, and I'm watching it on TV, it looked like almost his arm got pulled off. So
it looked violent.
It looked violent, and it looked like something irregular. So they seem very confident that he's going to come back and lose nothing. I'm not as confident, but I'm glad they are. I don't know what it means, but
I have a feeling that even though they're saying he's the guy and, we like Trey for now, that Trey and Sam Darnold is going to allow the Niners to take as long as they need with Brock. So if Trey and Darnold look good, they can just say, we're going to not start Brock week one. But he's almost ready. And until they lose, they can keep Brock on the sideline, which, it seems like you'd want to have him out as long as you can buy. As much time as you can buy. And I don't know. Maybe Trey gives him that time.
That's a good point. If Brock's timeline, if he's not ready to go immediately, because that's the other thing that came out today is that the timeline is all guesswork. And
they don't know.
Months, but it could be 5 months.
Right.
And if it's 5 months, he may not even miss preseason.
Right.
So we don't know. But, yeah, if the elbow is serious, I think if Trey starts or Darnold starts and they're winning games, I think if I'm John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan,
let it ride.
Let
it ride.
Give it as much rest as you can.
Yeah.
So make sure you bring him back by Thanksgiving, roughly, and you're good.
Yeah, because what could happen is Brock could still be your franchise quarterback long term. You just buy him some time and you increase Trey's trade value, trade him for more. Or you could find out, hey, Trey is the next Patrick Mahomes. And then you just got the information you needed. And now you got two franchise quarterbacks. What a great problem to have. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with on that. Great. Can you rate Larry's mock draft? No, I haven't seen it. But I'm not going to rate his mock draft until I do one of my own. It's very difficult to do an 11-pick mock draft, every pick after 98. That's high level of difficulty.
Well, I'll say this, too. I did it on the one of these databases that keeps offering you trades. And so I just kept taking the trades that made sense and moving back and moving around. I wound up with an 18-player draft and 7 additional picks for next year's draft.
Wow.
7.
That's amazing. It's a record.
It's a crazy draft. Next mock I do,
18.
I'm just going to go with where they pick. I won't project trades.
Okay. J. Mark Garza says, Larry spoke very highly of the tight end draft class, but didn't draft a tight end in his mock. I'm confused. Well, he's got another one coming out. Wait for it.
Give it a week. Give it a week.
Give it a week. Grant, I'm offended. Jimmy was worse than both. Yeah, sorry. I take it back, Jared. I didn't mean to call you a Jimmy fan without knowing you, because that's highly presumptuous. All right, enough quarterback stuff. It's interesting that the Niners are suddenly adding big offensive linemen. It started with Aaron Banks. It's way bigger than what they've normally brought in. Now, John Feliciano, Matt Pryor, these guys are huge and not particularly fast. These are like not the typical Shanahan offensive linemen. What is going on? Are they evolving? What's going on?
Well, I think it has a little bit to do with their backs. I mean, Ty Davis-Price, Jordan Mason, those guys are not Raheem Mostert. So I don't think you're going to see as much outside zone. getting to the edge. I don't think you're going
Yeah,
to see. I
that's
think you're
true.
going to see guys who
That's
can
true.
move people inside. Feliciano is a big run blocking bull who can play center or right guard. And the guy they just signed today, Matt Pryor, is huge. I mean, we're talking about 330 pounds,
Yeah.
6'7", long arms, locks out, good run blocker. So I like the idea of going with bigger offensive linemen because ultimately, if whether you have Trey or Brock, you're going to have a run heavy scheme and you're going to have to probably run without running to the edges. And that means you got to move some people in the run game and you got to have big people to move people. So I like it. I really like the Feliciano pickup, but the one today I really like as well because it's hard to find good tackles who are ready to plug and play. And it sounds like they want to go with McKivitz as the starter. So now you're just establishing Matt Pryor and Jalen Moore as the backups to compete for that one spot, maybe as a swing tackle.
I think the Mostert point is so good, and people don't acknowledge how important and unique Raheem Mostert was and how instrumental he was in getting the Niners to the Super Bowl. Like what he did in the NFC Championship game was one of the most legendary NFC Championship performances ever. And he wasn't the most dynamic running back, but what he did have was extraordinary acceleration. His first few steps from getting the handoff to getting outside the tight end was it was as good as any running back I've ever seen. And if you don't have a guy who can get out there instantly, all of a sudden your light right tackle, your light right guard, your light center are just getting knocked into the backfield. And all that penetration is forcing cutbacks. Mostert was way out in space before any of that stuff would happen. So yeah, I'm with you. If you can't run outside zone, you don't have the running back for it. Be like Philly and get a bigger offensive line and run downhill. The Niners want to be a physical downhill team anyway. So yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And Mostert was special. I would try. There's a running back in this draft from East Carolina named Keaton Mitchell, who is just like Mostert. I mean, he's like 2 steps. He's full speed. He's 4.3. He's to the edges. He's probably going to be there in the mid rounds. I'd love to see them add that kind of dynamic runner in the backfield. But right now they got big backs who are probably going to run inside. So you better be able to move some people.
Yeah, Jordan Mason's not getting to the edge.
No.
Ty Davis Price probably not getting to even Christian McCaffrey, hell of a running back, but more of a mid four. Yep,
Mitchell's an inside guy, right?
Yep. So I think it's an interesting trend. I feel like these small offensive linemen, the Shanahans have been gravitating toward them since the late '90s, and I think it's a little played out. These defensive linemen are so big, you can't just put out a 300-pound. I mean, my issue with McGlinchey was he was light. He would be airborne. You gotta be a little bit more stout than that, I think. So,
especially on the right side when you're trying to run with power, and I like it. I also like the idea of don't go into the draft. There's 2 positions that always worry me in the draft: offensive tackle and corner. You reach for these guys, these positions, because you need them so badly.
Yeah,
don't
they're hard to find.
Draft needing to reach for a right tackle. I'd rather go with the veteran, whether it was Tom Compton or this guy Matt Pryor. Go for a couple veteran offensive linemen so that you don't have to reach for an O lineman in the draft.
Yeah, because the last time the Niners did that, they got Mike McGlinchey.
Right, and before that, they got Joshua Garnett. Remember Josh Garnett?
Yeah, he was really bad. He was a lot worse than Mike McGlinchey. Glass Half Full guy says, do you guys see the Niners really going with McKivitz at right tackle? Can Zach Sekel play right tackle? What about Zach Sekel? No, do you? I asked him point blank, is the plan to play McKivitz at right tackle? And he said, yeah. John Lynch, do you buy it?
I do. I don't. Well, what I buy is I don't think, they're going to get into the first round for a tackle. Even if they traded Trey Lance and they got a first-round pick, I don't think they would use it on a tackle. I think tackle this year might kind of be like safety last year. In the draft, like we all expected, they're going to go safety, and they never went safety. Why? Because they were projecting a Fonga. They liked Gibson. Right. They had other guys. They had signed Odom. I think it's the same way this year. They like McKivitz. They gave him the gold helmet designation. You still got Jalen Moore. They just signed this kid Pryor. You got Spencer Burford, who might be able to kick out to right tackle. I think they like McKivitz, and I think they might go for a draft tackle, but I don't think it's going to be high. I think they're going to give the job to McKivitz.
I do too. Dustin the Gale says, Larry, new camera. If so, it looks good. Oh, yeah. He's got a new microphone too. He stepped it up. It's great. I'm over here with my old stuff.
Well, you're on the road, right?
I'm on the road. Yeah, I got my travel kit. All right. Last topic. So, interesting little nugget from today's media session with John Lynch. He said he and Kyle had to go to Jed York and ask, pretty please, can we sign Javon Hargrave? It's going to be expensive. And Jed said, yeah, I want the best, which is always nice, especially in a market where the Oakland A's exist. So God love you, Jed York, for, ever since he messed it up royally with Harbaugh and then Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, he has at least let John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan do whatever the hell they want. So I'll give him that.
Well, okay. Everybody, the fans for the most part always are pro Kyle. Lynch, they're very pro Lynch. It's always easy to rip the son of a billionaire. And so Jed's always been an easy target.
Yeah, look at me. I'm an easy target too. I'm a son of a billionaire.
There you go. But you're trying to make it so your son is the son of a billionaire.
Exactly.
No, but the Jed thing is, let's be honest about this. You can say that he made the wrong move on Harbaugh. Harbaugh was 44-19-1, and Jed and Harbaugh couldn't coexist, and they had to part ways. Okay. But since that point, he bought out Tom Sula's coaching staff. He bought out Chip Kelly's coaching staff. He went to Kyle. He's now gone every time they've asked for money for football reasons. He is there to write the check. I think Jed gets a bad rap. I think Jed has listened to his football people, and that's really all you can do. Eddie got Walsh, but Eddie hired Joe Thomas. Eddie traded 5 draft picks for O.J. Simpson, who was done at the time. Mm-hmm. One of those picks became Joe Cribbs. Eddie didn't know all. Eddie had to learn on the job. Jed had to learn on the job. But Jed at least he's listening to his football people. He's got a management structure where these guys are not trying to survive one another. Lynch and Shanahan are legitimately working together, unlike Balky and Harbaugh. So I think there's real growth there in Jed. Now, granted, he's not pulling it out of his last penny. He's not pulling it out of his savings account. The NFL produces huge cash revenue, and that's where this money's coming from. But he's still willing to spend the cash when he's being told by his football people that they need the cash, and I respect them for that. I really
What's funny, though, is he was willing to spend, or his parents were, when Harbaugh was here. That coaching staff was very expensive, those position coaches. So they've always been willing to spend on football. What's interesting, and he may have been right to fire Harbaugh. The whole idea was, is what I argue now with Kyle. Yeah, you're a good coach and you've built this team, but are you going to win a championship? And Jed looked at Harbaugh and said, no, this guy's not going to be a champion. And he might have been right. He's not like he's winning any championships over at Michigan. So if the analysis was correct, the problem was how he replaced him. Jim Tom Sula, that was a joke, defensive line coach. So what's interesting is he's fixed all that and he's back in everyone's good graces, but he's in the same position he was in 10 years ago. Really good team, NFC championships, right on the cusp, haven't gotten over the hump. What are you going to do about it, Jed? And so you could argue that he's grown, but you could also argue that he's back where he started. And it's okay, what's your next move? How are you going to – he talks about the quest for 6. He is on a quest for 1. How are you going to get 1, Jed? Because you've been on this quest for 20 years.
Well, the one thing I think links Jed and Kyle and Lynch is they're all going to be made men with Dr. John and Denise if they win. Yeah. John's going to be truly independent to do what he wants. Kyle's going to be truly independent, and he won't be questioned. Jed himself will probably gain true independence from Dr. John and Denise if they climb this mountain and get this 6th ring. So they're all tied to the same kind of thing.
We don't really know who hired Kyle. It might have been Jed. It might have been the parents. It might have been a whole family search. I don't know. I don't know. But after what Jed did with Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, I would imagine the parents would step in and be like, you know what? This is a family project now. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, he had to learn on the job, but in fairness, Eddie D did too. And everybody loves Eddie D. Why do they love Eddie D? Because his bottom line was their bottom line. He won titles and he spent frivolously and, all kinds of gifts and generosity, took care of his players. But what I love about Eddie, he is the impetus behind that Golden Heart Fund. Jed and this current group has pushed that forward. That's a groundbreaking, let's take care of our own kind of a program that I think you should be proud of. And there's a few other teams around the NFL that have copied it. I'm just saying, it's easy to rip Jed. Lots of people do. The reality is Jed's about winning. And he hasn't done it yet.
Right.
They've been a consistent winner. They haven't won it all. But I think that if he can climb this mountaintop, I think he'll probably have greater control over the franchise, and so will Lynch and so will Kyle.
It's tough to be the second generation owner, especially when your uncle was like, how many owners have 5 rings in American sports? Not that many. So Eddie's he's like Kobe Bryant. How many athletes have 5 rings? We even see Clay's ultimate put down of a player. When someone's talking trash, all of a sudden he just goes,
right.
That's it. That's all he has to say. That was the Niners. 5 rings. 5. That's it. 5 rings. And Jed can't add to that. And it's like, there's no shame in that. A lot of organizations don't win Super Bowls. They haven't won Super Bowls, but he's close. He's so close. And he has people like you and me offering him great suggestions. It's no excuse. No excuse.
Well, think about it too. He's born into a family where he's had, wealth beyond his dreams his entire life. So when you have that kind of money and your future is so financially set, you're all about the ring, because the ring will validate him more than any dollar amount. So he's all about that ring. He's passionate to get it. And to me, in some ways, Jed not getting it has given him what Eddie had that he didn't have, which was this unbelievable passion. And now he's starting to develop it because out of necessity, because he knows this is his holy grail. If he climbs this hill, he'll be viewed as successful.
And to his credit, he believes that getting Javon Hargrave gives the Niners the defensive line they need to win the Super Bowl. I would just, and this is neither here nor there, I would just say, at what point is Jed York and this organization going to realize, how many years do they have to have the number 1 defense in the league and not win the Super Bowl before they realize that, you're not going to win the Super Bowl that way? You have to have a great offense, not a great defense. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just maybe the pendulum will swing back to defense. I think rules would have to change for that to happen, though.
All I'll say is, after watching Mahomes, is that the only thing that it's convinced me is that there is no shortcut. And if you're going to beat Mahomes, you better be able to score 30 points a game, and you better have impact players on all 3 levels of your defense. And I would endorse the move to pick up Hargrave, because when I watched Kinlaw get bounced around, I said, you know what?
It's bad.
That is the number 1 need of the 49ers, a dominating two-way, run player, pass player, defensive tackle who dominates. They didn't have it, and it's hard to find in the draft. So
and what's crazy is, even if you have an offense that can score 30-plus points and you have playmakers at all 3 levels of your defense, you're still not going to beat Kansas City. Although they lost some guys this offseason. They're really depending on some young wide receivers next season. We'll see what happens. CJ Smooth says, if Trey is traded and Brock is average, do Lynch and Shaney get another shot to get a FQ? If Trey is traded and Brock is average, that's not good. If that happens, I don't know.
Well, that's a great question. I would say Shanahan probably, if they don't win, they probably both have 3 years before anybody internally will put any pressure. But they don't have an endless amount of time. But I would say they've got, even if this doesn't work out, they probably got 3 years, 3 to 5 years.
Ominous24 says, do you guys think Mahomes would have had the same success had Kyle drafted him? Hell no. Kyle only hurts. Poor Trey. I don't know. I don't think so, but I guess we'll never know. It's possible that Patrick Mahomes is so good you couldn't miss. I don't know.
Yeah, did Reed make Mahomes, or did Mahomes make Reed? I think I'm going to go with the player on that.
I'm thinking Mahomes would be good in a box with a fox on a train.
Right.
In the rain, he'd be really good. I mean, you just had to have the foresight to freaking draft him. Fish and Chips. Yeah. Fish and Chips says, there's a problem for Jed for a ring. Schemer Kyle. Schemer Kyle. Schemer Kyle. I kind of like that. Calling him Schemer Kyle. Mark Salas says, been a fan since 62. I've lived through it all with the Niners. I must say that while I do want to see more Super Bowl trophies, I enjoy being in the hunt year after year versus what the Rams did.
Amen. I like that too. The Niners approach is better than the Rams approach, even if they don't get the ring. Because the reality is Grant doesn't want it, I don't want it, none of you want it. We don't want to look you in the eye and say, guess what? Check back with us in 2027. They're screwed on the cap because of mismanagement. You got to play this thing year to year. You got to give yourself a chance. I like the way the Niners are doing it. They're doing it with depth, and they haven't found their quarterback or maybe they have. To this point, it's eluded them, but I'd rather be them than the Rams.
Only thing I would say is the extreme of this is you get yourself in like a playoff purgatory. And you see it a lot in the NBA where a team, the way they're constructed, they're good but not good enough. And they reach a level and they can't get past it. And I think in the NFL with the Niners, what would put them in purgatory is your quarterback isn't good enough. Your offensive line isn't good enough. Even if your quarterback were good enough, you couldn't keep him healthy. So burden of proof is on them to show that that's not the case. But that's what I would argue, is that they're bordering on a playoff purgatory team that's going to be in the mix every freaking year because of that defense and what they have. But it's just a flawed construction. Maybe I'm wrong. Niners Daddy says, oh, go ahead.
All I was going to say is I like their approach the last couple of years where they're getting a lot of day 3 picks and a lot of picks after the draft. They are incredibly deep. So if you're so deep, then you can spend a boatload in free agency on any one need that pops up. So I kind of like their approach. It's hard to replicate. It's hard to find guys as undrafted players and have them be good players. But Mostert and others, Aziz and others, Givens, and I mean, they've done it. So hopefully they can continue doing it.
I mean, they got the left tackle. They got the running back, the fullback, the tight end, the wide receivers, the DN, the D tackle, the linebacker, the safety, the corner. They need this quarterback. They have everything. But until you get the quarterback, what are you? A contender, a pretender? It's up to you. Niners Daddy says, how did John and Kyle fall out of love with Trey Lance so quickly? 3 first-round picks and dumping on him after 4 starts is wild. Is it that they fell out of love with Trey or that they fell madly in love with Brock Purdy after the 3rd date? That could be the case. 8th date. Could have been a good courtship.
I just think Brock took it. He went out there and took it. And the same way he took it, if Trey Lance gets on the field this year and does the same thing, we may be talking about Trey Lance and no more about Brock Purdy. Brock got an opportunity. He ran with it. If Trey gets that opportunity this year and he's throwing for 300 yards and the Niners are 4-0, Brock's not coming back in.
The way I look at it is like Brock Purdy's that AAA pitcher you brought up just because someone was hurt and he threw a no-hitter. And you're like, well, damn, I didn't know he could do that, but he threw a no-hitter in his debut. So you know what? He's going to stay in the rotation one more week and we'll see where this goes. Like, that's essentially what happened. Like, how do you pull the plug on Brock Purdy now? You can't. I mean,
you lose.
He did too well. He's pitching a no-hitter. He got hurt, but he still essentially hasn't given up a base hit. So let it ride. See what happens. Sometimes, these AAA pitchers come back down to earth, but he might be the truth. We'll see.
You know who's the biggest advocate for Purdy in the room that I could tell, even though he tried to do it diplomatically because he had such a tight relationship with Garoppolo, was Kittle. And the second biggest Purdy guy in the room, I thought, was Ayuk. And why is that? Because those guys are literally going to make more money and probably add another level to their house because of Brock Purdy.
Drewish guy, thank you for the $5. Isn't Drewish a joke from Spaceballs? I think it's a Spaceballs joke. I could be wrong. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but I think it. Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for watching. Larry, what are you doing? You never stop. What are you doing the rest of the day?
What am I doing the rest of the day? I'm doing some videos on some of these things that have happened, so look for that on the channel. My son's doing a great job helping me with that. And later on today, you know what I was going to talk to today, but we're actually doing it tomorrow, is FP Santangelo from the Giants. Talk little Giants baseball. We had Ned Coletti on last night. Wayne Breezy's going to join me on the show this week. The great Crocker is going to be on the show this week.
Nice. He's kicking my ass in the finals,
he?
But there's no shame in that. Gotta love Eric Crocker.
Well, see, you didn't play for the Jets.
Nah, I didn't play for the Jets.
You didn't play, or did you? You might.
Nah, I wish. I want to challenge Eric Crocker to a 40-yard dash, though, although I think I'm too old to prove my point. So maybe I won't.
Yeah, don't do that.
Maybe I won't.
Maybe
getting waxed by Eric Crocker in the finals is enough embarrassment for 1 year. Anyway, go watch Larry. Thanks for watching me. I'll be back tomorrow. Kyle talks at 7:45 a.m.
Oh,
Bright and early, 7:45. I'm going to sleep now. I didn't sleep last night. I'm exhausted. I don't remember a single thing I said on this show. Good night. Good night.